In the vast silence of space, a distress signal echoed, a plea for help so faint and desperate it could only mean disaster. The message pulsed through the interstellar comm systems, yet no one responded. Species that could have assisted remained hesitant, caught in debates and protocols, weighing risk against obligation. Only humanity, known as the wild card of the galaxy, answered the call, and they were ready, despite the cautionary voices that whispered against it. Captain Kaelen Arjun stood on the bridge of the United Earth ship Orion's call, a vessel equipped for exploration, but more than capable of defense. Kaelen was restless, his jaw clenched as he watched the unreadable depths of space through the viewport. The alien council's indecision grated at him, a slow-burning anger simmering beneath his otherwise calm exterior. This was no time for diplomacy or hesitation. Worlds were falling, entire civilizations teetering on the brink of annihilation, and yet the galactic powers remained paralyzed. But humans were not about to let innocent lives be lost, not on their watch. "Captain," came a steady voice from his side. Kaelen turned to see Commander Ryan Mera, his second-in-command, standing at attention. A veteran officer with a reputation for cool logic, Ryan had often tempered Kaelen's fiery determination with caution, but today, even Ryan's calm exterior was laced with a sense of urgency. "All systems are ready, sir." The crews assembled and awaiting orders. Kaelen nodded, his eyes never leaving the stars. "This signal came from Sector Thalios 4, he said, his voice carrying the edge of restrained frustration. "The Council wants to wait, to assess whether or not it's worth the risk, as if there's any choice when people are begging for help." Ryan remained quiet, understanding that this was more than just another mission for Kaelen. The captain's sense of duty ran deep, and he wore his anger not as a mask, but as fuel, a drive that would not let him stand idly by. Kaelen's heart was set on a single idea: humanity had to be different. The galaxy viewed humans as unpredictable, emotional, and even volatile. And perhaps, Kaelen mused, they were all of those things, but their so-called anger was precisely what gave them the courage to act when others would not. "We're not waiting," Kaelen finally said, his voice solid and unyielding. "Prepare the jump. I want us in that sector in under an hour." The bridge crew exchanged glances, a sense of determination swelling within them. They knew what this meant. To go against the Council's implicit command was no small decision, but they trusted Kaelen. He had proven time and again that his instincts were sharp, his courage unwavering. The communications officer, a young woman named Lieutenant Ayla Soros, looked up from her console. "Sir, are we expecting any repercussions for responding to the call?" Kaelen turned to her, and his expression softened slightly. "Maybe, Ayla, but this is what we're here for. Let the Council debate and hesitate. We're going to save lives." Ayla nodded, the worry in her gaze replaced by fierce determination. She returned to her station, hands moving swiftly over the controls. Kaelen knew his crew was the best he could ask for. They didn't shy away from danger, nor did they falter when their orders diverged from galactic expectations. That was the beauty of humanity's so-called reckless nature. Once they committed to a cause, there was no turning back. As preparations continued, Kaelen felt a presence at his side. Dr. Senya Liara, the ship's xenobiologist and diplomatic liaison, observed him with her perceptive gaze. Senya was a voice of reason on his crew, a person whose counsel Kaelen had often relied upon in moments of uncertainty. "I can see this is personal for you," she said quietly, her tone both empathetic and measured. Kaelen nodded, not denying it. "It's just this constant waiting, this endless debate. How many more worlds have to suffer while the Council sits in its chambers, arguing over semantics?" Senya's expression softened. "They're afraid, Kaelen. The void pulse isn't just a threat. It's an unknown. They fear it will end them before they can understand it." "We all fear the unknown," Kaelen replied, his voice tinged with impatience. "But fear shouldn't stop us from trying to help. If we're going to stand for something, let it be the courage to act, not the cowardice to sit back and watch others suffer." She nodded, clearly understanding, though there was a glimmer of caution in her eyes. "Just remember, Kaelen, the Council's views may differ, but they're not our enemy." He didn't respond immediately. He was focused, unwavering. "Maybe they're not our enemy, Senya, but they're not our allies either. Not right now. Not while they wait for a convenient moment to care." Senya said nothing, her silence reflecting a subtle agreement. She knew that once Kaelen had set his mind to something, he would see it through. "Lieutenant Ayla," Kaelen called, his voice ringing across the bridge. "Confirm the coordinates for the jump. I want us ready to move as soon as possible." "Yes, sir," Ayla replied, her fingers moving swiftly over the console. The hum of the ship's systems rose as the FTL engines powered up, preparing to launch the Orion's call into the unknown. "Commander Mira," Kaelen continued, addressing Ryan, "I trust you've briefed the crew on what we're facing." Ryan nodded. "They're aware, Captain. Morale is high, but there's caution. Everyone understands the gravity of this mission." "Good," Kaelen said. "Remind them that we're not just responding to a signal. We're here to make a difference." Ryan's expression tightened, respect gleaming in his eyes. "They know, Captain, and we'll be ready." Kaelen gave a slight nod, his gaze sweeping across the bridge one last time. Every face he saw reflected determination, a mirror of his own resolve. They were all aware of the risks, of the reputation that humans carried in the galaxy, but they embraced that reputation, channeling it into a fierce commitment to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. As the countdown for the jump initiated, Kaelen felt a surge of pride in his crew, in their shared defiance of fear and hesitation. Whatever lay ahead, be it ally or adversary, they would face it head-on, bound by the same relentless drive. "Engage jump," Kaelen ordered, his voice carrying a finality that left no room for doubt. The stars outside the viewport blurred as the Orion's call hurtled forward, leaving the doubts and debates of the galaxy behind. They were on their way, fueled by the indomitable spirit that only humanity possessed, the anger that refused to stand idle in the face of suffering. As the stars streaked past, Captain Kaelen Arjun allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. They were answering the call, and they would be the ones to make a difference. The Orion's call glided through space, its FTL jump completed, now coasting toward the distant sector Thalios 4. The faint call for help echoed in Kaelen's mind, propelling him to act with urgency. This was no ordinary mission, and he needed the best his crew could offer, each member bringing a unique strength, each ready to face the unknown. As Kaelen strode down the main corridor, he felt the weight of the responsibility settling on him. The decision to embark on this mission against the Council's guidance would not be without consequence. Yet, he found strength in his crew's determination and skill, each one of them defying expectations and challenging limits. Dr. Senya Liara was the first to join him in the briefing room. She stood by the holographic console, scrolling through the data they'd managed to gather about the void pulse. Senya was the team's scientist, a skilled xenobiologist, and someone who could find the logic and patterns within chaos. She held a rare talent for understanding alien perspectives, a skill Kaelen respected. As she studied the data, her face was calm, focused, yet a glimmer of curiosity brightened her eyes. "Senya, anything we didn't already know?" Kaelen asked as he approached. "Not much, I'm afraid," Senya replied, turning to him. "The void pulse defies conventional understanding. All we know is that it seems to consume everything in its path. Energy, matter, entire worlds. Its movements follow no predictable pattern, which makes it difficult to counter." Kaelen nodded, his brow furrowing. "And yet, we're diving straight toward it." Senya's lips curved in a slight smile. "Yes, Captain, but if anyone can find a solution, it's this crew. We're not exactly known for sticking to the predictable." Before he could respond, the door slid open, and Commander Ryan Mera entered. Ryan was all sharp edges and discipline, a strategist by heart, with a knack for seeing patterns others missed. His pragmatic approach often balanced Kaelen's own fiery resolve, and while they sometimes clashed, Kaelen trusted Ryan's instincts as much as his own. "Captain, Dr. Liara," Ryan greeted with a nod. "Are we any closer to understanding this anomaly?" "Unfortunately, not much," Senya said, glancing at Ryan. "But that's where your tactical mind might help. The void pulse's movements are sporadic, but perhaps there's a logic we're missing." Ryan's gaze turned to the holographic display. He studied the map, tracing the erratic paths the pulse had taken across various sectors. "Whatever this is, it doesn't act like any known entity. This kind of destruction doesn't seem random, but if it's deliberate, then we're dealing with a far more complex threat." Kaelen crossed his arms, considering their words. "Then we can't afford to think in conventional terms. If the pulse is driven by something, maybe it's something we can reach." As if in response to Kaelen's thoughts, the doors opened again to reveal engineer Leora Tane. Leora was an enigma, her mind constantly working on solutions to problems no one else had even considered. She approached the team with a casual, almost detached air, but Kaelen knew her sharp intelligence was always on high alert. "Captain, Commander, Doctor Liara," she greeted each with a nod before focusing on the holographic console. "So, we're still trying to figure out how to stop an unstoppable force?" "That's the idea," Kaelen replied, a hint of amusement breaking through his tension. "I trust you have something unconventional up your sleeve?" Leora grinned. "Always. I've been running simulations based on the pulse's energy consumption patterns. If it's feeding off matter and energy, Maybe we can disrupt its intake with an artificial field strong enough to interfere with its core function. Ryan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. And you think we can generate a field that powerful? With the ship's core and some adjustments to our shielding technology, we might, Leora replied, her expression all determination. But it's just a theory for now. Kaelen looked at each of his crew, their expertise and confidence filling him with a renewed sense of purpose. Each one brought a perspective that would be critical in the face of the unknown. They would need every bit of creativity and resourcefulness to face a force like the Void Pulse. Good. Start your simulations, Leora. Ryan, continue analyzing the pulse's movements. Senya, keep looking for any biological signatures, anything that might give us insight into what this thing is, Kaelen directed, feeling the thrill of the challenge rising within him. Just then, Zarak's thigh entered the room, his tall, slender frame casting an otherworldly silhouette in the doorway. Zarak was one of the most unusual members of the crew, a telepath from the deeply spiritual Nadharan race. His species was known for their empathic abilities, able to sense and sometimes influence emotions. Zarak's gaze was calm, his manner serene as he joined the group. "Captain, I believe my abilities may be of use," he said in his soft, melodic voice. "If the pulse possesses any form of consciousness, there may be a way to reach it." Kaelen's eyebrows rose. "You think you can communicate with something as destructive as the Void Pulse?" Zarak nodded slowly. "It's possible. I may not understand its nature, but I can sense fragments, impressions. It's like a storm with whispers buried within it. If we approach carefully, we might establish a connection." Senya looked intrigued. "That could be our breakthrough. If we can understand its motives, we might find a way to stop it without resorting to brute force." Ryan, ever the strategist, looked skeptical but willing. "And if we can't stop it with words, we'll still need a backup plan." Kaelen took a moment to absorb it all, his mind assembling the pieces of their approach. The Alien Council saw humanity's decision to intervene as reckless, yet here he was, surrounded by a crew capable of both compassion and ingenuity, ready to use every tool at their disposal to protect the galaxy. "Then it's settled," Kaelen said, his voice resolute. "Each of you knows what you need to do. This isn't just about responding to a call for help. We're here to prove that humanity's strength lies in its determination to make a difference, no matter the odds." The room filled with silent affirmation as each crew member took in Kaelen's words, their expressions a mix of anticipation and resolve. They understood the stakes, and they understood the risk. But this was what made them human, or, in Zarak's case, what aligned him with their mission. There was a fire in their hearts, a fierce need to stand against the tide, even if the rest of the galaxy watched from the sidelines. "Meeting adjourned," Kaelen said finally, giving them all a firm nod. "Prepare for our approach to Thalios 4. We don't know what's waiting for us, but we'll be ready." As his crew dispersed to their stations, Kaelen stayed behind, studying the holographic display of the Void Pulse's path. He thought of the countless lives that had already been lost, of the worlds swallowed by the relentless force. It was uncharted territory, a place where rules didn't apply. But the Orion's call was ready, and so was he. Kaelen clenched his fists, a surge of determination rising within him. They would be the ones to face the darkness. They would be the ones to answer the call, and they would not return empty-handed. The Orion's call entered Sector Thalios 4 with the kind of tense silence that only a crew facing the unknown could experience. Every system was online, every sensor honed to detect any trace of the Void Pulse. The bridge hummed with focused energy as Kaelen and his team prepared for their first encounter with the force that had driven countless species to fear. Kaelen watched the stars beyond the viewport, feeling the familiar tug of anticipation and dread. Thalios 4 was supposed to be a thriving, resource-rich sector, home to a dozen populated planets and a network of orbital stations. Now only silence greeted them, a vast empty stillness where life had once pulsed. "Captain," Lieutenant Ayla Soros spoke up, her voice steady but carrying an edge of tension. "We're picking up remnants of energy signatures. They match the readings associated with the Void Pulse." Kaelen's gaze sharpened. "Bring it up on the display, Lieutenant." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a ghostly image of Thalios IV's once bustling planets. Now, they were scarred with vast swathes of barren, lifeless land, entire continents reduced to ashen plains. Debris from shattered orbital stations floated across the sector like a silent warning to any who dared venture too close. Dr. Senya Liara leaned in, her eyes narrowed as she absorbed the grim scene. "It's as if something drained the very essence from these worlds. Whatever the Void Pulse is, it doesn't simply destroy, it consumes." Kaelen's expression darkened. The destruction was systematic, ruthless, almost methodical. It was as if the pulse left nothing to chance, ensuring that every particle of matter was stripped bare, leaving only the hollow shells of once living worlds. "Commander Ryan," Kaelen said, his voice low. "What's your read on this?" Ryan folded his arms, his gaze intense as he studied the images. "This is no random force of nature, Captain. It feels deliberate, almost predatory. This thing acts with a purpose." The word predatory hung heavy in the air, its implications sending a chill through the bridge. Ryan was right. This wasn't mere destruction. It was annihilation with intent. And whatever the void pulse's purpose was, it went far beyond mindless devastation. "We're picking up faint life signs," Ayla announced, her fingers moving swiftly over her console. "They're weak, scattered across what remains of the third planet." The third planet had once been the crown jewel of Thalios IV, a hub of trade and diplomacy. Now it was little more than a ruin, its once thriving cities reduced to gray wastelands, but faint signals of life remained. A flicker of hope amid the desolation. Kaelen's gaze hardened with resolve. "We're going down there. If there are survivors, we'll get them out." Ryan turned to him, his expression cautious. "Captain, we don't know what's waiting for us down there. If the pulse left anything behind, it may not be something we can fight." "I understand the risks, Commander," Kaelen replied. "But if there's even one person left alive down there, we owe it to them to try." Ryan nodded, his reservations set aside by Kaelen's unyielding resolve. It was a risk, but the stakes were too high to ignore. Kaelen could feel the weight of every decision pressing on him, but he welcomed it. This was why they had answered the call. Within minutes, Kaelen, Ryan, Senya, and Leora assembled in the hangar, joining a squad of armed officers and medics. The shuttle hummed with energy as it prepared for departure, its hull vibrating with the tension that filled the air. Senya adjusted her helmet, her expression focused as she ran through her equipment. "If the pulse has any residual presence on the planet, we need to be cautious. The energy readings suggest it could disrupt our systems." Kaelen acknowledged her warning with a nod. "Understood. We proceed with caution, but we don't turn back. Let's bring them home." The shuttle launched, descending toward the desolate surface of the third planet. As they entered the atmosphere, the silence intensified, pressing down on them like a physical weight. The once blue skies of Thalios III were now a pale, sickly gray, thick with ash and the remnants of what had once been civilization. Their landing site was a fractured plain just outside the ruins of a major city. Towers that had once touched the sky now lay in crumbling heaps, their structures twisted and scorched. The quiet was overwhelming, as if every sound had been swallowed by the pulse's unrelenting hunger. They exited the shuttle, their movements cautious as they scanned their surroundings. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, an invisible weight pressing on their minds. Ryan's hand lingered near his weapon, his instincts on high alert. "We need to move quickly," Kaelen said, his voice low. "Ayla, can you get a fix on those life signs?" Ayla, monitoring from the shuttle's console, responded in his earpiece. "Yes, Captain. They're concentrated in an underground structure about a half-mile from your position." "Let's move," Kaelen ordered, and the team advanced, their steps measured but swift. As they made their way through the shattered streets, remnants of Thalios III's inhabitants lay scattered, a discarded toy, a broken datapad, the silent remnants of lives interrupted. Senya's gaze lingered on the ruins, her expression haunted. "This place was vibrant," she murmured. "So much life now, erased. And for what?" Kaelen shared her sentiment, though he held his emotions tightly. They needed to stay focused, to keep their anger directed towards saving the living rather than mourning the lost. They could grieve later, once they had answers. They reached the entrance to an underground bunker, its reinforced doors partially open. Faint sounds drifted out, a murmur of voices, the shuffle of movement. Hope flared within Kaelen as he gestured for his team to proceed. Inside, they found a group of survivors, haggard, gaunt but alive. Men, women, and children looked up at them with expressions of astonishment and relief, the sight of rescuers a glimmer of hope in their haunted eyes. One of the survivors, an older man with a stooped frame, stepped forward. His voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken in days. You're humans. We thought no one would come." Kaelen knelt beside him, his gaze steady. "We're here to get you out. But first, tell us what happened here. What did you see?" The man's face twisted with fear as he recalled the events. It came without warning, a force like nothing we'd ever seen. It wasn't just destroying, it was feeding, consuming everything. "We tried to run, but the pulse, it followed us. We barely made it here." Senya's eyes widened, her expression one of realization. "Feeding. It's more than a weapon. It's a living entity, something that grows stronger as it consumes." Kaelen absorbed this new information, the implications unsettling. So this pulse, this thing, could be gaining power with every world it takes. The survivor nodded, his voice barely a whisper. It's a nightmare, Captain. A force that leaves nothing but silence in its wake. Ryan exchanged a glance with Kaelen, his expression grave. They were facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered, something beyond the realm of traditional warfare, beyond even the usual threats of the galaxy. The Void Pulse wasn't just a weapon, it was a predator, a cosmic force with a hunger that defied understanding. Kaelen rose, his determination hardening. They would not let this creature continue its rampage, not while they had the power to stop it. "Let's get these people to safety," he said, his voice filled with purpose. "And then we find a way to fight back." The underground bunker was cramped, with survivors huddled together in dim lighting, their faces bearing the marks of exhaustion, fear, and desperation. The air was thick, laced with the stale scent of enclosed space and the palpable tension of lives held together by hope alone. Kaelen moved through the crowd, offering reassurances, his voice calm and steady despite the weight of their suffering. As he spoke with each person, Kaelen saw flashes of lives interrupted, a mother clutching her child, a young man with a bandaged arm, a scientist clutching a datapad as if it held the secrets to salvation. They were each surviving in their own way, barely holding on to the remnants of who they'd once been. Commander Ryan Mera approached Kaelen, his face grim. "Captain, the situation topside isn't improving. The Void Pulse is reacting. It's like it senses our presence here and it's agitated." Kaelen's jaw clenched. The Void Pulse was beyond their understanding, a force that seemed almost sentient. Each minute they lingered put the survivors and his crew in greater danger, but he knew he couldn't abandon these people. He turned to his team, his gaze resolute. "Dr. Senya, can you make sure these people are fit to travel? We need to move. And quickly." Senya nodded, already examining the survivors. She moved swiftly, checking vitals, patching up minor injuries, and offering words of comfort. Her calm, reassuring presence seemed to work wonders, the survivors visibly relaxing under her care. She reached the mother holding a young boy, her gaze softening as she took in the child's fragile frame. "Are you both well enough to travel?" Senya asked gently, kneeling beside them. The mother nodded, though her expression was tinged with worry. "He's weak, but we'll manage. I'll carry him if I have to. We need to get out of here." Senya placed a hand on her shoulder, her voice steady. "We'll get you to safety. I promise." Nearby, Leora Tane was working on recalibrating her equipment, the small device in her hands emitting a faint hum as she adjusted its settings. Kaelen raised an eyebrow as he watched her, curiosity mingling with urgency. "What are you working on, Leora?" Leora looked up, her eyes shining with a familiar glint of determination. "I'm trying to create a temporary shield. If the Void Pulse is as sensitive to energy as we think, a strong enough field might buy us time to evacuate everyone without detection." Kaelen nodded, appreciating her quick thinking. Leora's mind was always working on solutions, anticipating the needs of the mission even before they arose. He knew her innovation would be invaluable. "Good work, Leora. Let me know when you're ready." She gave him a nod, her hands already returning to her adjustments. The faint hum grew louder as she tested the shield, a shimmer of light surrounding her device, then fading as it stabilized. It was a temporary solution, but it could be the edge they needed. Meanwhile, Zarak Sathai, the telepath from the Nadharan race, moved quietly among the survivors, offering a sense of calm that extended beyond mere words. His presence was almost ethereal, his movements fluid and purposeful as he touched the minds of those in the bunker, offering them a sense of peace. Kaelen noticed that even the most frightened among them seemed to relax, their tense postures loosening under Zarak's influence. Finally, Kaelen gathered his team, his voice low but firm. "We need to make our way back to the shuttle. Our window of escape is shrinking and the pulse won't wait." He directed his attention to the survivors, his voice carrying a note of reassurance. "Listen to my crew. Stay together, and we'll get you out of here." With that, they began the trek out of the bunker. The survivors clung to one another, moving cautiously, their eyes wide with fear and hope. Kaelen led them through the shattered landscape of what had once been a bustling city. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the soft shuffle of footsteps and the occasional whisper among the survivors. As they reached the city's outer edge, Ryan, who had been scanning the area ahead, raised his hand, signaling for everyone to halt. He motioned to Kaelen, his expression tense. "Captain, we've got movement. The pulse, it's adapting. It's like it knows we're here." Kaelen's gut twisted. This wasn't a mindless force of nature. It was something that learned, something that could adjust its actions in response to the world around it. His suspicions about the void pulse's sentience seemed more plausible with every encounter. "We're close to the shuttle," Kaelen said, addressing the group. "We just need to hold it off a little longer." Leora stepped forward, her device now emitting a low hum as she activated the temporary shield. A soft, translucent barrier enveloped them, giving off a faint shimmer in the gray twilight. "This should help mask our energy signatures for a bit," she explained, her voice laced with urgency. "But it won't last long." Kaelen nodded, appreciating her quick thinking. "That's all we need. Let's move." They continued forward, their pace quickening, the shield providing a brief respite from the pulse's encroaching influence. Senya stayed close to the survivors, her eyes scanning for any signs of distress among them. Zarak maintained his steady presence, a calming aura radiating from him as he silently reassured those nearby. The shuttle came into view just as Leora's shield began to flicker. Kaelen urged the group forward, his voice rising over the hum of the shield. "Get to the shuttle, now." One by one, the survivors clambered aboard, followed by the crew. The shuttle's engines roared to life, its systems powering up in preparation for takeoff. Kaelen took one last look at the desolate landscape, a mixture of sorrow and anger tightening his chest. This world had been vibrant, filled with life and potential, and now it was nothing more than a husk. But there was no time to linger. He climbed aboard, sealing the hatch behind him as the shuttle lifted off. From the viewport, he could see the pulse swirling below, a dark cloud of shifting energy that seemed to pulse with awareness. It had sensed them, it had reacted to their presence, and it would continue its destruction if they didn't find a way to stop it. As they ascended, Ryan leaned in beside him, his expression somber. "We've saved these people, Captain, but there are countless others who won't be so lucky if we can't figure this out." Kaelen nodded, his gaze fixed on the shifting darkness below. "I know, but we'll find a way. This pulse, it's more than just an enemy. It's a predator, and it's evolving. We have to get ahead of it." Senya, who had been tending to one of the survivors, approached Kaelen, her face a mask of resolve. "Captain, I think we're dealing with something that defies conventional understanding. This pulse, it's almost as if it's driven by instinct. Hunger, perhaps, maybe even purpose." Kaelen's jaw tightened. "Then we'll find out what that purpose is, and if there's any way to turn it back, we'll do whatever it takes." The shuttle cleared the atmosphere, and the stars reappeared beyond the viewport. Kaelen felt a swell of determination as he looked out at the vast expanse of space. They were a small crew, a single vessel among countless worlds, yet they had the power to stand against forces the galaxy had never seen. "Set a course back to the Orion's call," he commanded. "We're not done yet." As the shuttle soared back toward the safety of their ship, Kaelen felt the weight of the mission pressing upon him, tempered by the fierce resolve of his crew. They had saved lives today, but the true battle was only beginning. They were up against a force that would not rest, and neither would they. This was what it meant to be human in a galaxy that saw their anger as recklessness. Kaelen knew better. Their anger wasn't a flaw. It was a weapon, a fire that refused to die, and they would wield it to protect the galaxy, no matter the cost. Back on board the Orion's call, Kaelen's mind churned with questions. The void pulse had displayed behavior far beyond that of a natural phenomenon. It had adapted to their presence, responding to their movements like a living, calculating predator. This was no mindless force. It was something far more dangerous, a threat they needed to understand if they had any hope of stopping it. Kaelen gathered his team in the command center, the room dim except for the faint glow of the holographic map projected above the table. The image of the pulse floated in mid-air, dark and ominous, its swirling patterns a haunting reminder of the devastation it had already wrought across the galaxy. Every eye in the room was fixed on the image, and Kaelen could sense the same unease rippling through his crew. "Let's get to work," Kaelen began, his tone steady but laced with urgency. "What we've seen so far suggests the pulse isn't just consuming worlds. It's adapting to each encounter. We need answers. Dr. Senya, what's your take?" Senya stepped forward, her eyes thoughtful as she examined the holographic map. "From what we've observed, the pulse's behavior aligns more with that of a predatory organism than a natural event. It doesn't just destroy, it absorbs energy and matter, as though it's feeding, and that feeding appears to enhance its capabilities. Every world it consumes makes it stronger, more intelligent." Leora, who had been reviewing her own data, looked up, a frown deepening on her face. "I've run an analysis on the residual energy signatures left behind on Thalios 3. They're not just random. The pulse left an imprint, almost like a signal. It's as if it's marking the territory it's consumed." Kaelen absorbed this new piece of information, his mind racing. So, it's spreading but not aimlessly. It's claiming territory, leaving a trail to show where it's been. Exactly, Leora confirmed. It's marking its progress, and it may even be using those imprints to track its own path. This isn't just a force of destruction. It's following some kind of internal logic. Commander Ryan crossed his arms, his gaze hard as he studied the display. So what we're facing is essentially a living force of nature, something that feeds and grows stronger with each conquest. But why? What could drive something like this to consume entire worlds? Zarak's thigh, their telepathic ally, stepped forward, his expression contemplative. I have sensed faint traces of thought within the pulse, whispers that suggest a purpose beyond mere hunger. It's as though it remembers something, fragments of an identity it has lost. The revelation sent a shiver through the room. A force with a purpose was terrifying enough, but a force with memories? That was something else entirely. Kaelen struggled to make sense of it, to wrap his mind around the idea that this vast, destructive entity might once have been something else. Are you saying this thing might have once been sentient? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zarak nodded slowly. It's possible, Captain. The fragments I sensed were faint, like the remnants of an ancient civilization. Perhaps this pulse was not always what it is now. Perhaps it has become something monstrous over time. Senya's eyes widened as she considered the implications. If that's true, then there's a chance the pulse has an origin, a beginning point. Something must have caused it to evolve, or devolve, into this form. If we can understand that, we might find a way to stop it. The room fell silent as the crew absorbed the enormity of Senya's words. They were dealing with a being, or perhaps a civilization, that had transformed into a force of pure destruction. The question now was why. Kaelen turned to Leora, his mind already moving toward their next step. Leora, you mentioned a signal, an imprint left behind by the pulse. Is there any way we can track it? If this thing is following some kind of pattern, maybe we can get ahead of it. Leora's face brightened, the spark of innovation flashing in her eyes. I believe so. If I can amplify the residual energy readings, we might be able to trace the pulse's movements across previous sectors. It'll take time, but it's possible. Do it, Kaelen ordered, his tone leaving no room for hesitation. If we can predict its path, we'll have a chance to intercept it before it reaches another inhabited world. Ryan, however, looked unconvinced, his brow furrowed in thought. Captain, we're assuming that the pulse can be reasoned with or stopped by understanding its past. But what if it's beyond reasoning? What if this thing has evolved to a point where it's lost all sense of identity? Kaelen met Ryan's gaze, understanding his concern. If that's the case, then we'll have to find another way to stop it. But I refuse to believe that we're facing an unstoppable force. Everything has a weakness, even something as powerful as the void pulse. Senya's expression softened as she looked at Kaelen, admiration flickering in her eyes. That's what sets us apart, Captain. Where others see something beyond comprehension, we see a challenge, a problem to solve. Kaelen nodded, his resolve hardening. This was why they had answered the call, why humanity had chosen to act when the rest of the galaxy had hesitated. They weren't willing to stand by and watch as worlds fell. They would keep pushing, keep searching, until they found the pulse's vulnerability. Let's move forward on all fronts, Kaelen said, his tone decisive. Leora, start tracking the pulse's movements. Ryan, continue refining our defensive protocols in case we have to engage it directly. And Senya, keep digging into its energy signatures. Anything you can find that might tell us more about what it was before, whatever it is now. Each crew member nodded, their expressions set with determination. They had their orders, and they would execute them with the same relentless drive that had brought them this far. Kaelen could feel the fire within his team, the shared sense of purpose that bound them together. This was more than a mission. It was a fight for survival, for the chance to save not only themselves, but countless others. Just as the team dispersed to begin their tasks, Zarak spoke up, his voice soft but urgent. Captain, I would like to attempt a deeper probe of the pulse's mind, if it can be called that. The impressions I've sensed so far are faint, but if I can connect with it more directly, I might uncover more about its true nature. Kaelen hesitated, his instincts warning him of the risks. Zarak, are you sure that's safe? This thing isn't just dangerous. It's overwhelming. Zarak inclined his head, a faint smile on his lips. I am aware of the risk, Captain, but understanding is worth the danger. If there is even a fragment of sentience left within the pulse, we owe it to ourselves to seek it out. Kaelen studied him, sensing the quiet strength beneath Zarak's calm exterior. Zarak was not human, yet his willingness to confront danger for the sake of knowledge felt profoundly familiar. Kaelen nodded, giving him permission to proceed. "Be careful, Zarak," he said, his voice laced with genuine concern. "If anything feels wrong, pull back immediately." Zarak's expression remained calm. "Thank you, Captain. I will proceed with caution." As Zarak left to prepare for his probe, Kaelen turned back to the holographic map, his gaze fixed on the swirling image of the pulse. The stakes were rising, and the path ahead was uncertain, but Kaelen knew one thing with unshakable clarity. They would not give up. They would press forward, pushing against the darkness until they found the answers they sought. The void pulse was unlike anything they had ever encountered, but they were human, and humanity had a way of confronting the impossible head-on, refusing to accept defeat even when it seemed inevitable. With one final look at the pulse's ominous image, Kaelen left the command center, the fire of determination burning brighter than ever. They would uncover the secrets of this cosmic predator, whatever the cost. The Orion's call drifted silently near the edges of the void pulse's latest conquest, an expanse of blackened, barren worlds that once thrived with life and color. The bridge was tense, every crew member alert, their movements sharp and deliberate. The pulse's presence was a shadow over their minds, a constant reminder of the peril they faced. Kaelen stood at the helm, his gaze fixed on the holographic display that traced the pulse's destructive path, moving ever closer to new territories. "Captain," Zarak's voice was soft but resolute, breaking the silence on the bridge. "I am prepared to attempt a deeper telepathic probe. If there is any remnant of sentience within this entity, now is the time to reach it." Kaelen nodded, a mixture of apprehension and hope tightening his chest. They had learned so much about the pulse, its consuming nature, its evolution with each world it devoured, but they still didn't know why, and if they were going to stop it, they needed to understand it. "Understood, Zarak. The second you feel anything abnormal, pull back. This thing operates on a scale far beyond us, and I don't want to lose you to it." Zarak gave a slight nod, his gaze serene. "I will proceed with caution, Captain, but if there is a chance to reach it, I must take it. There may be a way to bridge the gap between us and this ancient force." Zarak settled into a meditative position at his station, closing his eyes as he focused his mind, reaching out to the pulse. The bridge crew watched him in silence, breaths held in anticipation. Minutes ticked by, each second stretching with tension, until Zarak's face twitched, his calm expression flickering with hints of strain. Kaelen leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "Zarak, report. What are you seeing?" Zarak's voice was distant, as though he were speaking from another world. "Fragments, memories, scattered like stardust. It is as though the pulse was once something else, something with purpose, with consciousness, but it has been fractured, lost in an endless void." The revelation was startling. Kaelen exchanged glances with Senya, whose face showed the same mix of disbelief and wonder. If the pulse had once been sentient, if it remembered a past beyond destruction, then there might be a way to reach it. "What kind of memories?" Senya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Zarak's breathing grew strained, his forehead furrowing as he dug deeper into the pulse's scattered consciousness. "It recalls fragments of civilization, a society of beings as ancient as the stars, a people who thrived on knowledge, on the mysteries of the universe. But something went wrong." Ryan's voice was skeptical, his expression hard. "And you think that's a reason to trust it? A glimpse of a forgotten civilization doesn't mean it can be reasoned with. For all we know, it's too far gone." Kaelen held up a hand, signaling for silence. "Let him continue. This is the closest we've come to any sort of communication. If there's even a fraction of consciousness left, we need to find out." Zarak's face contorted briefly with strain, his eyes remaining shut. There is a sense of loss, a feeling of endless hunger, of a need to consume to survive. It's as if it no longer remembers its purpose, only the drive to continue existing. The pulse has become trapped in an endless cycle, driven by a primal need to consume. The words sent a chill through the room. The idea that the pulse had once been something more, something capable of thought, of purpose, felt almost surreal, and yet here it was, a cosmic entity reduced to an insatiable hunger, consuming worlds as a means to persist in an empty existence. "What if we could help it remember?" Senya's voice broke the silence, her tone contemplative. If this pulse was once a civilization, perhaps there's a way to reawaken that part of it, to give it a reason beyond destruction. Ryan's skepticism was clear. And how exactly do we help an entity the size of a solar system remember who it was? This isn't a person with memories. It's a force of nature, one that's been destroying entire civilizations. Kaelen, however, found himself considering Senya's suggestion. They had tried everything else. Evasion, confrontation, survival, nothing had truly affected the pulse. But if there was even a sliver of sentience within it, perhaps they could reach it, speak to it on a level beyond mere survival. Zarak, Kaelen said, his voice resolute, if you think there's a chance, I want you to try to communicate with that part of it. Whatever it is, show it something that might trigger those memories, something that might awaken its lost purpose. Zarak opened his eyes, his gaze weary but determined. I will do my best, Captain, but this will require a greater connection than before. It will sense my presence, my mind reaching out. There is a risk. Kaelen's expression softened with respect. I understand, Zarak, but we're with you. If there's anything we can do to support, say the word. Zarak nodded. Closing his eyes once more, he reached out, projecting not just his thoughts but emotions, a sense of longing, of the desire for understanding, for peace. The bridge fell silent, the crew holding their breath as they waited, watching Zarak's still form. Minutes passed, the tension thickening until finally Zarak's eyes snapped open, his face pale. It heard me. Kaelen leaned forward, his heart pounding. And, what did it say? Zarak took a deep breath, gathering himself. It does not speak as we do, but it responded with images, fragments of its former existence. A civilization lost to time, a society that once embraced the cosmos, and then an image of its own decay, as though it were watching itself fall apart over centuries. A flicker of hope sparked within Kaelen. So, it's aware of what it has become. On some level, yes, Zarak replied, his voice filled with wonder. It showed me its hunger, not as a desire, but as a curse, a prison of its own making. It consumes because it knows no other way to exist. It has forgotten everything else. Senya's expression softened, her gaze distant. Then maybe we can show it another way. If we can remind it of its past, its purpose, perhaps it would choose to stop. Kaelen looked at his team, each face filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. This was a dangerous gamble, but it was their best shot at stopping the pulse without further destruction. Let's try it, Kaelen said firmly, but we'll do it as a team. We'll broadcast a message, something that it can recognize as a reminder of what it once was. We'll show it what life is, what purpose beyond consumption looks like. They quickly prepared, linking the ship's communication systems to Zarak's telepathic abilities. Together, they assembled a message, a projection of unity, of peace, of purpose beyond survival. It was a message that spoke to the essence of existence, of meaning beyond mere sustenance. Zarak took a deep breath, the entire bridge silent as he projected the message toward the void pulse. His thoughts radiated out, amplified by the ship's systems, reaching the pulse in a wave of intent and empathy. Images flowed through the message, images of civilizations thriving, of worlds brimming with life, of connections that transcended isolation and loneliness. A heavy silence filled the bridge as they waited, watching the display for any response. The pulse remained dark and ominous, its swirling patterns eerily still, and then slowly, it began to pulse with a different energy, an energy that felt less like hunger and more like confusion. Kaelen's heart raced. They had reached it. Somehow they had broken through to the remnants of whatever consciousness lingered within the pulse. Zarak's voice was faint, but filled with awe. It's listening. It doesn't understand fully, but it feels something, a yearning for the past, for the life it once knew. Kaelen's gaze hardened with determination. Then we'll keep sending the message. We'll show it that it has a choice. The pulse pulsed again, its dark clouds shifting, a hint of hesitation visible within its swirling depths. For the first time, Kaelen felt hope. They had made contact, and though the journey ahead was uncertain, they had taken a crucial step. They were reaching the void pulse, not as enemies, but as beings with a shared purpose and perhaps a chance for redemption. Back aboard the Orion's call, a cautious optimism filled the air. They had made contact with the void pulse, reached the faint remnants of whatever consciousness lingered within it. For the first time, they had reason to believe that the pulse could be reasoned with, that perhaps, somewhere in its depths, lay a spark of its former self, capable of understanding and even change. But their moment of hope was short-lived. A high-priority transmission from the Galactic Council came through, disrupting the quiet relief that had settled over the bridge. Kaelen steeled himself, anticipating the familiar disapproval that was bound to follow. The Council had tolerated his mission thus far, but he knew their patience was running thin. They saw humanity's defiance as a risk, a liability. The Council's holographic image flickered to life, a panel of alien leaders seated in their vast chamber. Their expressions were grave, eyes piercing as they regarded Kaelen and his crew. The Council's spokesperson, a severe-looking representative of the Alpharan species, addressed Kaelen, her voice clipped and icy. "Captain Kaelen Arjun of the Orion's call, it has come to our attention that you have disregarded protocol and engaged in direct contact with the Void Pulse." Her tone was laced with accusation, and her gaze narrowed as if humanity's audacity was a personal affront. "Your actions are reckless and endanger the stability of the entire sector." Kaelen straightened, a defiant glint in his eyes. "With all due respect, Counselor," he began, choosing his words carefully, "we're the only ones actively working to understand and stop the pulse. The Council has been debating protocol while entire worlds have been consumed. We couldn't wait for permission while lives were at stake." The Counselor's expression darkened, her posture rigid with disapproval. "Your approach is brash, impulsive. You are risking the safety of not only your crew, but the entire galactic network. The Void Pulse is not something to be reasoned with. It is a cosmic force beyond our comprehension. To assume otherwise is arrogant." Commander Ryan, standing beside Kaelen, couldn't hold back his frustration. "Arrogance. We've seen what happens when you sit back and do nothing. The pulse adapts, it evolves, and it's relentless. We're not asking for permission to do what's necessary." "Enough!" the Counselor snapped, her patience evidently worn thin. She turned her gaze back to Kaelen, her tone frigid. "You will cease your attempts at contact immediately and return to Council-approved defensive measures. Your orders are clear." Kaelen's jaw clenched, the fire within him sparking to life. He knew he was testing the Council's authority, but he also knew that he couldn't turn back now. The Orion's call was not a ship built to sit idly by while others suffered. They had made progress, and he was not about to abandon that for the sake of appeasing a group of cautious bureaucrats. "With all due respect, Counselor," Kaelen said, his voice calm but unwavering, "we've connected with the pulse. It's not a mindless entity. It remembers something of what it once was. We're close to reaching it on a deeper level, to showing it another way. I believe we can prevent further destruction." The Counselor's expression twisted with disdain. "You believe? That's a dangerous stance to take, Captain. Belief is not enough to safeguard the galaxy. The Council requires action grounded in proven measures, not risky experiments." Dr. Senya Liara, who had been observing the exchange quietly, stepped forward. "Counselor, if I may, we've observed behavioral changes in the pulse. It's hesitant, as if it's beginning to question its own nature. This is unprecedented, and it suggests that the pulse might be more than a force. It's a relic, possibly an ancient civilization transformed. Ignoring this could lead us to miss a critical opportunity." Another Council member, a stoic figure with scales that shimmered faintly under the holographic light, spoke up. "Your words are compelling, Doctor, but the risk is too great. This pulse has already devastated dozens of systems. If it's evolving, then it could be evolving into something even more dangerous." Kaelen felt his frustration mounting, a familiar anger bubbling to the surface. They were so blinded by caution that they couldn't see the chance before them, couldn't see that their very fear was paralyzing them. "With all due respect, Counselors," he said, his voice cutting through the tension, "we're already at risk. Standing by, debating policy while worlds fall, won't save us. If humanity has one strength, it's that we act when others hesitate. We won't turn back." The Counselors exchanged wary glances, their discomfort evident. Finally, the Alpharan spokesperson spoke, her voice tinged with resignation. "Captain Arjun, your defiance will not be tolerated much longer. Continue on this path, and the consequences will fall squarely on your shoulders. You are instructed to disengage immediately and adhere to Council directives." The transmission cut off, the holographic Council fading back into silence. The bridge remained still, every crew member looking to Kaelen for his response. Kaelen took a deep breath, his gaze steely with determination. "We're not stopping," he declared, his voice carrying the weight of a decision made. "The Council can disapprove all they want. We're the ones out here facing this thing. They have no idea what it's like to see a planet consumed by the pulse. We're humanity's first and only line of defense, and we're not giving up." Ryan let out a sigh, his expression caught between frustration and admiration. "Kaelen, You know this is going to come back to us, right? If the Council chooses, they could mark us as rogues. Kaelen shrugged, the weight of his choice settling over him. If they want to call us rogues, let them. We didn't come out here to play politics. We're here to save lives, and if that means bending the rules, so be it. Dr. Senya placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We're with you, Captain. The Council may not see it, but we do. This isn't just about orders, it's about doing what's right. Leora stepped forward, her eyes fierce with determination. And if we're on our own, then so be it. We have each other, and that's enough. We're closer to understanding this thing than anyone else in the galaxy. The Council's fear won't stop us. The crew nodded in silent agreement, their expressions resolute. They were united in purpose, bound by a fierce loyalty that surpassed the bureaucratic rules set by a distant council. This was about something greater, about protecting the galaxy, about fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Zarak spoke, his voice calm but with a steely edge. If we abandon this mission, if we stop seeking answers, then the pulse will continue unchecked. It may never remember its former self, but we must try. To abandon it now would be to lose the only chance we have at lasting peace. Kaelen took a moment to let their words sink in, feeling a swell of pride for his crew. They had come together for this mission, each of them from different worlds, different backgrounds, but united by a shared belief in the need to make a difference. The Council's disapproval only solidified their resolve. Then we proceed, Kaelen said, his voice carrying across the bridge. We'll continue reaching out, trying to awaken whatever is left within the pulse. This is our fight, and we're not backing down. They set to work, each crew member returning to their station, a renewed sense of purpose guiding their actions. Zarak prepared for another attempt at contact, his telepathic senses honed and ready. Senya refined the message they would send, crafting it to evoke memories of civilization, purpose, and unity. Leora enhanced their communications array, strengthening the projection to penetrate deeper into the pulse's consciousness. Kaelen took his place at the helm, a fierce determination burning in his eyes. They were taking a path fraught with risk, but it was a path that could lead to salvation or devastation. Either way, they would face it together, prepared to defy the Council, to stand against the galaxy's greatest threat, and to bring hope to a universe that had all but given up. As the Orion's call prepared to transmit once more, Kaelen's voice echoed through the bridge, a rallying cry that carried the weight of their mission, their purpose, and their refusal to yield. For every world that's fallen, for every life lost, he said, his voice steady, unwavering, we won't stop. We'll find a way to end this, and we'll do it together. The crew nodded, a unified front ready to face the unknown, prepared to challenge the galaxy's greatest fears. They would answer the call, not with fear, but with the courage that defined humanity and their allies, standing firm in the face of overwhelming darkness. The atmosphere on the Orion's call was electric. Despite the Council's disapproval, Kaelen's crew was more united than ever. They had defied orders, standing on the brink of an encounter that might change the fate of the galaxy. Every member of the crew moved with purpose, eyes determined, each prepared to face whatever consequences awaited them. Zarak prepared himself for the next telepathic connection with the void pulse. His previous attempt had only scratched the surface, reaching faint fragments of its memories. But this time, they needed more. He intended to delve deeper, to find the core of whatever was left of its consciousness and awaken it fully, if it could still understand the idea of its own existence. Kaelen, standing beside Zarak in the dimly lit meditation chamber, observed him with quiet intensity. The room was a refuge from the bustling activity of the bridge, a place where Zarak could focus without distraction. Kaelen placed a hand on Zarak's shoulder, a gesture of trust and solidarity. We're all with you, Kaelen said, his voice low but resolute. If there's anything you need, anything that can help, don't hesitate to ask. Zarak nodded, closing his eyes, his serene expression betraying only the slightest hint of strain. Thank you, Captain. This connection will be deeper than before. If the pulse reacts, it may feel invasive, perhaps even hostile. I will need to remain calm, to convey empathy and understanding, despite its potential aggression. Kaelen's jaw clenched at the thought of the dangers Zarak faced. Then do what you need to, Zarak. We're here, every step of the way. Zarak took a deep breath, sinking further into concentration, and the room filled with a subtle hum as he began reaching out telepathically. Kaelen watched, feeling the weight of the moment. They had no backup, no safety net if this went wrong, but they had each other, and Kaelen had learned to trust in the extraordinary abilities of his crew. On the bridge, Dr. Senya and Leora monitored the void pulse's response through the ship's sensors. Its presence, vast and inscrutable, floated in the darkness beyond the ship. The pulse was massive, its form shifting and swirling like a cosmic storm, and yet it felt strangely still, as though it were waiting. Senya leaned forward, her gaze fixed on the pulse's fluctuating energy readings. It's reacting. I can see minor fluctuations in its energy patterns. Zarak's reaching it. It's listening. Leora nodded, her hands dancing over her controls, adjusting the ship's communication array to help amplify the connection. "Come on, Zarak," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "Show it something it hasn't felt in eons." Inside the meditation chamber, Zarak's breathing became more labored, his face twisting as he encountered the pulse's vast, chaotic presence. He could feel its disorientation, its fractured memories scattered like stars across a night sky. Beneath the surface, he sensed a pulse of emotions: rage, confusion, and a profound, aching loneliness. "Captain," Zarak's voice was distant, strained. "I am seeing memories of a world that was. It once had form, purpose, a civilization. The pulse remembers, but only in fragments. It's lost, drifting in its own darkness." Kaelen's hand tightened into a fist. "What else, Zarak? Can you help it remember more?" "I'm trying," Zarak replied, his brow furrowing as he focused. He projected images of unity, of civilizations thriving in harmony, of worlds that knew balance instead of devastation. He showed it glimpses of life, fragments of joy and connection. The pulse trembled, its swirling mass flickering as if struggling to comprehend these new concepts. Zarak felt its confusion intensify, a powerful wave of despair mixed with fury. In that moment, the pulse lashed out, its presence surging forward with a primal, instinctual need to protect itself. Zarak gasped, his body jolting from the telepathic backlash. Kaelen instinctively steadied him, concern flashing across his face. "Zarak, pull back if it's too much," Kaelen urged. Zarak shook his head, his face pale but determined. "No, I can still reach it. It's reacting out of fear. It doesn't understand why I'm here, what I want. I need to show it." Kaelen nodded, his trust unwavering. "Then keep going, but don't push too hard." Zarak steadied himself, pushing forward with renewed focus. He projected calm, a sense of safety, of non-hostility. He let the pulse feel his presence not as an intruder, but as an ally reaching out from the darkness. Slowly, the pulse's turbulent energy began to settle, its rage ebbing into a hesitant curiosity. "It's working," Zarak murmured, his voice trembling. "It's calming." On the bridge, the crew watched as the pulse's energy levels stabilized, its chaotic patterns shifting into a gentler rhythm. The tension lifted slightly, but every crew member remained vigilant, understanding that the situation was far from stable. Dr. Senya turned to Leora, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for. If Zarak can help it understand, maybe it will choose to stop." Leora's expression was cautious, tempered by the memory of the pulse's destructive nature. "I hope you're right, Senya, but if it loses control, we'll need a contingency plan. We can't risk it consuming the ship." Kaelen's voice crackled through the bridge speakers. "Prepare all systems for a defensive protocol. If Zarak succeeds, we may not need it, but I want us ready." Inside the chamber, Zarak sensed the pulse's attention shifting, its focus narrowing on him as if it were finally perceiving him not as an intruder, but as a consciousness. He felt a pang of recognition, an echo of what the pulse had once been, a being that understood relationships, that grasped the concept of purpose beyond survival. "It's seeing me, Captain," Zarak said, his voice filled with awe. "It's reaching back. There's a memory, a fractured piece of itself, a lost part. I think it was once something more than this, something capable of choice." Kaelen's heart quickened. "Then show it that it has a choice now. Show it what it could be again." Zarak pushed deeper, letting his own emotions resonate with the pulse's fragmented memories. He showed it images of creation, of worlds growing and changing, of civilizations learning and evolving. He shared the concept of unity, of different beings working together for a shared purpose. He sensed a shift, a glimmer of something resembling understanding. But as Zarak connected further, he encountered something else, a deep-seated pain, a wound in the pulse's very essence. The pulse recoiled, its energy flaring in a burst of fury and sorrow. "It's broken," Zarak whispered, his voice barely audible. "There's a part of it that can't heal, a wound that drives its hunger. It's empty, consumed by its own loss." Kaelen's voice, steady and filled with determination, broke through. "Then help it find something to fill that void, Zarak. Give it a reason to be more than just a predator." The pulse's energy wavered, its chaotic form quivering as Zarak shared a sense of purpose beyond survival, Beyond destruction, he showed it memories of life's wonders, of connection, of a universe that held more than emptiness. But the pulse began to pull back, its vast form trembling as it struggled with the unfamiliar concepts. Zarak felt its resistance, the weight of countless years lost in darkness pressing against his mind. It wasn't rejecting him, but it was afraid. Afraid of what it might have to become. Zarak, his strength waning, reached out one final time. You can be more than this. You can exist without hunger, without fear. Let us help you. The pulse hesitated, its energy swirling in a pattern that almost felt like confusion mixed with a tentative hope. And then, for the briefest moment, Zarak sensed something akin to an answer, a faint acknowledgement, a quiet longing to break free from its cycle. The connection faded. Zarak's energy exhausted. He slumped forward. His breathing labored, and Kaelen caught him, steadying him as he struggled to recover. Zarak. Did it respond? Kaelen asked, his voice barely containing his hope. Zarak nodded weakly. It acknowledged me, Captain. It doesn't fully understand, but it wants to. It's willing to try. A wave of relief washed over the bridge crew as Kaelen's voice came over the intercom, filled with cautious optimism. We've done it. We've reached it. Now we find a way to help it break free. The crew shared a quiet moment of triumph, each one understanding that they had taken a monumental step. The void pulse was no longer an unstoppable force. It was something they could connect with, something that perhaps could change. The Orion's call hung silently in the vast expanse, waiting as the crew absorbed the impact of Zarak's breakthrough. They had connected with the pulse on a deeper level than any of them had thought possible, breaking through to a fractured remnant of its former self. Now, they stood on the precipice of something even greater, a chance to awaken the pulse's lost identity. Kaelen gathered his senior team in the briefing room, the air thick with anticipation and tension. Around the table sat Senya, Ryan, Leora, and Zarak, each looking to him with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. This is our chance, Kaelen began, his voice steady but carrying the weight of the moment. The pulse has acknowledged us. It's starting to understand that it can be something more than a cosmic predator. If we succeed, we could save countless worlds from destruction. Senya nodded, her face reflecting a fierce resolve. We need to show it more than memories. We need to give it a reason to change, a reason to break free from its hunger. The pulse is an ancient entity, and it's spent who knows how long trapped in a cycle of consumption. It won't be easy for it to let go. Ryan leaned forward, his tone cautious. What happens if it resists? If it decides that understanding isn't worth the risk? We could be facing an even stronger enemy, one that now knows we tried to alter it. Kaelen understood the concern. They were treading dangerous ground. They were asking an ancient force to redefine itself, to confront eons of existence with a new purpose. But he also knew they couldn't back down now. They had come too far, seen too much to simply walk away. We take that risk, Kaelen replied firmly. We're out of options. The Council won't act, and the galaxy isn't prepared for what will happen if this pulse continues unchecked. We owe it to every world it hasn't reached yet. Leora, her face thoughtful, spoke up. What if we could give it a sense of identity again? Zarak sensed its memories. The pulse once had form, purpose, perhaps even relationships. If we could reconstruct some fragment of that identity, it might respond. Zarak, still recovering from his intense connection with the pulse, looked up, his voice quiet but resolute. I believe I can reach it again. I sensed a longing within it, a fractured self searching for meaning. But this time, I'll need the support of the entire ship. We'll need to create a synchronized resonance, a way for each of us to project a piece of ourselves, our own sense of identity. Senya's eyes brightened with understanding. We'll show it what it means to be alive, what it means to choose. If each of us projects a sense of purpose, maybe it will recognize that there's an alternative to hunger and isolation. Kaelen nodded, feeling a surge of hope. This plan was bold, perhaps reckless, but it was grounded in the very core of what made them human, and that, he knew, was their greatest strength. Then let's get to work, he said, standing. Leora, I need you to adjust the ship's resonance systems. We'll synchronize every crew member's thoughts and emotions, creating a kind of psychic bridge. Zarak, you'll lead the projection, guiding it toward the pulse's core consciousness. Senya, help organize the crew. Everyone needs to understand the importance of what they're about to do. They dispersed, each setting to their tasks with purpose. Kaelen could feel the energy aboard the ship shift as word spread. Every crew member would be involved in this projection, each one sharing a fragment of their identity with the pulse, showing it the breadth of life beyond survival. Hours later, the crew gathered in their stations, the ship's systems calibrated to amplify their collective resonance. Kaelen stood on the bridge, his hands gripping the console as he felt the hum of synchronized energy flow through the ship. Zarak stood beside him, his expression calm and focused, ready to guide the projection. Kaelen activated the intercom, his voice carrying through every corridor and cabin of the Orion's call. Crew of the Orion's call, today we face an enemy unlike any other. But this enemy is also an ancient being lost in the darkness, searching for something it can't name. We have the chance to give it that purpose, to show it what it means to be more than just hunger. Each of you, focus on what drives you, what gives your life meaning. Together we will show it that there's another way. As the projection began, each crew member reached inward, drawing forth their memories, their hopes, their identities. The ship thrummed with a quiet power, every mind aligned in purpose, every heart beating with the same resolve. Zarak closed his eyes, reaching out telepathically to the pulse, letting the wave of identities flow through him as he connected with the ancient entity. He projected images of family, of love, of sacrifice. He shared memories of learning, of growth, of moments that gave meaning beyond mere survival. At first, the pulse resisted, its energy swirling in agitation. Zarak could feel its confusion, its instinctual fear of change. But slowly, as the resonance deepened, the pulse's resistance began to wane, its vast energy quieting as it absorbed the projections. Kaelen and his crew watched as the pulse's dark clouds shifted, taking on a gentler, almost hesitant rhythm. Zarak's voice trembled as he spoke, still in deep connection with the pulse. It's listening, it's trying to understand, it remembers fragments of existence, of connection, but it fears that it's lost forever. Kaelen stepped closer, his voice barely a whisper. Show it that nothing is truly lost. Show it that it can become something new. Zarak pushed deeper, projecting a sense of renewal, of rebirth. He showed the pulse the cycle of life, how growth could follow destruction, how it could find peace instead of hunger. He could feel the pulse's hesitation, its fractured mind torn between instinct and the possibility of change. The pulse's energy began to condense, its chaotic form slowly reorganizing. Kaelen and the crew watched in awe as the pulse's swirling mass coalesced, becoming more structured, more deliberate. For the first time, the pulse's presence felt less like a threat and more like a presence, aware and searching. Captain, Zarak's voice was soft, filled with a quiet amazement. It's awakening, it's remembering itself. On the bridge, the crew held their breaths, watching as the pulse's dark clouds gave way to a radiant glow from within, like the dawning of a distant star. The pulse's energy radiated outward, filling the space around it with a gentle luminescence. For the first time, Kaelen sensed something beyond destruction within it, a flicker of curiosity, of awareness. The pulse sent a wave of energy back toward the Orion's call, a gentle touch, tentative but unmistakable. Kaelen felt it like a whisper in his mind, a wordless question, as if it were trying to understand the beings who had reached out to it. Zarak spoke, his voice trembling. It wants to know why we helped it, why we didn't destroy it when we had the chance. Kaelen smiled, his voice filled with quiet pride as he answered, because life is about more than just survival. It's about growth, about change. We believe that even the darkest paths can lead to light. The pulse pulsed softly, its energy shifting in response. Zarak sensed its gratitude, a profound, overwhelming feeling of relief as it let go of its ancient rage and isolation. Kaelen could feel the bridge crew's quiet awe, each crew member moved by the transformation unfolding before them. As the pulse stabilized, its energy calm and contained, Zarak felt a final message radiate through him, a sense of farewell tinged with gratitude. The pulse would go, it seemed to say, to seek its own path, its own purpose beyond consumption and hunger. The bridge filled with a gentle fading light as the pulse drifted away, its vast form dissipating into the starlit void, a being reborn with a new understanding. Kaelen watched it go, his heart filled with both relief and wonder. They had reached the pulse, transformed it, given it the chance to become more. A quiet reverence settled over the ship as the pulse's presence vanished, leaving only the soft hum of the Orion's call as it drifted in the vast, silent expanse of space. They had faced the impossible, not with weapons or force, but with empathy and understanding. Kaelen looked around at his crew, each face reflecting the weight of what they had accomplished. They had changed the course of the galaxy, saved countless worlds, and awakened a being once lost to darkness. In that moment, Kaelen knew they had done more than just respond to the call. They had answered it in the truest sense, proving that humanity's strength lay in its ability to reach across the void, to offer hope, even to those who had forgotten what it meant to be alive. As the Orion's call lingered in the quiet that followed the Pulse's departure, the crew felt a collective weight lift from their shoulders. They had accomplished the impossible, breaking through to an ancient force and giving it the chance to redefine itself. Kaelen looked around the bridge, seeing the relief and pride etched on each crew member's face. But he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy would not be the same after this encounter, and they still had to face the Galactic Council. Kaelen opened a channel to relay the news. "This is Captain Kaelen Arjun of the Orion's call. We have made contact with the Void Pulse and initiated a successful transformation. The entity has withdrawn from its path of destruction, with a new understanding and purpose. The threat is no longer imminent." He took a breath, bracing himself for the Council's reaction. He expected skepticism, perhaps anger, even disbelief, but he hadn't anticipated the silence that greeted his message. Minutes passed before the Council's spokesperson, the Alpharan Counselor, appeared on the holographic screen, her face unreadable. "Captain Arjun," she began, her tone icy but controlled. "The Council has received your report. This entity, it simply chose to change, to cease its consumption?" "Yes, Counselor," Kaelen answered, holding her gaze. "The Pulse remembered fragments of its past. By reaching out to it, we helped it recall a purpose beyond hunger. It has gone to find its own way, no longer a threat to the galaxy." The Counselor's face remained impassive, her expression scrutinizing. "Your actions, Captain, have gone beyond the Council's protocols. You've acted against direct orders, placing the galaxy at risk without approval. This defiance cannot be overlooked." Kaelen felt a familiar frustration rise within him but kept his tone steady. "With all due respect, Counselor, we didn't act in defiance. We acted to protect the galaxy in the only way that would work. The Pulse needed to be reached, not fought. The Council's response would have led to further destruction." A murmur ran through the Council chamber as other representatives debated quietly, their words lost to Kaelen across the distance. Finally, the Counselor raised a hand to silence the discussion, her gaze fixed on him. "We acknowledge your success, Captain, but your methods are unconventional and unsanctioned. You disobeyed a direct order. The Council cannot condone such actions." Ryan, standing just behind Kaelen, stepped forward, his voice hard with conviction. "Counselor, I think it's fair to say the Council's approach would have doomed us all. Captain Arjun saved lives, entire worlds. Surely that counts for something." The Counselor's eyes flicked to Ryan, then back to Kaelen. "Captain Arjun, this Council cannot operate on the whims of individuals who see themselves above protocol. However, the Council acknowledges the unique nature of this event. You and your crew will be allowed to return to your post, but know that any further deviations will be met with strict disciplinary action." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence once more. Ryan let out a huff of irritation, muttering under his breath, "Bureaucrats. They'd rather follow a rule book than face reality." Kaelen exhaled slowly, feeling both relieved and weary. "We did what we had to do, Ryan. That's what matters." Dr. Senya smiled at him, her expression warm with approval. "The Council may not understand, but we do. You didn't just save the galaxy, you changed it. The Pulse was an ancient being, older than most civilizations. The fact that we could reach it, help it rediscover itself, that's monumental." Kaelen nodded, absorbing the weight of her words. They had done something unprecedented, and while the Council might not see it, he knew that this mission would echo through the galaxy. Their actions would set a precedent, a reminder that sometimes the greatest threats weren't defeated by force, but by understanding. The days that followed were filled with messages from other ships and planetary leaders who had heard of the Orion's call's actions. Some were messages of gratitude, others of awe, and a few even of skepticism, but all acknowledged that something remarkable had occurred. The Void Pulse, a cosmic predator that had terrorized countless systems, had chosen a new path because a single ship's crew had dared to reach out. One transmission in particular caught Kaelen's attention. It was from a scientific research vessel stationed near the outer rim of the galaxy, where new, unfamiliar energy readings had begun to appear. "Captain Arjun, this is Dr. Risa Eldrin from the Astera. We've been monitoring unusual energy fluctuations following the Void Pulse's transformation. It seems to be stabilizing regions affected by its previous path. Energy levels are aligning with standard galactic parameters, and life-sustaining environments are gradually returning. It's as if the pulse is repairing the damage it once caused. Kaelen's eyes widened with surprise, and a slow smile spread across his face. The pulse wasn't merely leaving the galaxy, it was attempting to undo its past devastation. This wasn't just a victory, it was redemption. He turned to Senya, who looked as astonished as he felt. The pulse is healing? It's trying to make amends. Senya's face softened, and a glint of awe shone in her eyes. It's chosen its new purpose. By remembering who it was, it's embracing a new path. The bridge crew was quiet, each member moved by the weight of the revelation. They had given the pulse not only a second chance, but also the opportunity to reshape its existence. It was a being that could have destroyed them all, yet it had chosen to become a force for restoration. Kaelen opened a channel to the entire ship. Crew of the Orion's call, I want you all to hear this. The void pulse is not only leaving us in peace, it's beginning to repair the worlds it once consumed. We didn't just prevent further destruction, we helped set it on a path toward healing. A quiet cheer went up across the ship, the relief and pride tangible in every face around him. Kaelen looked at his crew, a mixture of races and backgrounds, each one part of a collective effort that had changed the galaxy. Leora approached him, a smile spreading across her face. Captain, we may not get medals for this one, but we've done something bigger than any award could recognize. Kaelen chuckled, the tension that had burdened him lifting. You're right, Leora. We won't need medals to remind us of this. We'll remember it every time we see a world that was saved because of what we did here. In the following weeks, the Orion's call became a symbol of hope, a testament to humanity's willingness to reach across divides, even to the darkest corners of the cosmos. Other ships, inspired by their actions, began exploring ways to engage with threats through understanding rather than brute force. As the ship continued its journey, Kaelen felt a new purpose resonate within him and his crew. They were no longer just soldiers or explorers, they were guardians, pioneers of a new approach to galactic peace. They would face future challenges with the same courage, with the same willingness to see beyond the surface and understand the unknown. One evening, as Kaelen stood alone on the bridge, watching the stars drift by, he felt a familiar faint pulse within his mind, a quiet touch, as if the void pulse were sending him a final silent message of gratitude from afar. A smile spread across his face, and he whispered into the void, "You're welcome." He knew he would never see the pulse again, but he also knew that its legacy would endure. It had left a mark on the galaxy, a testament to the power of empathy, of understanding, and of change. And for Kaelen and his crew, it was a reminder that no matter how vast and dark the galaxy might seem, even the most ancient and lost among them could still find a new beginning. With a quiet sense of satisfaction, Kaelen turned from the stars, his heart filled with resolve. They had faced the unknown, embraced the impossible, and emerged not as conquerors, but as champions of peace. As the Orion's call continued its journey through the stars, Kaelen knew they were ready for whatever came next. They had proven, not just to the galaxy but to themselves, that hope and understanding were as powerful as any weapon, and they were prepared to carry that message into every corner of the universe. The weeks that followed their encounter with the Void Pulse were unlike anything Kaelen and his crew had experienced. They were no longer just a ship patrolling the galaxy. They had become a beacon, a symbol of hope and resilience for civilizations near and far. The story of the Orion's call's defiance of the Council and their miraculous connection with the Pulse spread quickly, igniting debate, admiration, and reflection across the galaxy. In the wake of their mission, Kaelen received numerous messages from other captains, scientists, and leaders. Some praised their courage, while others questioned the risks they had taken. But one sentiment resonated throughout: the galaxy was forever changed. The Orion's call had reminded them all that even the darkest forces could hold the potential for light. As Kaelen stood on the bridge, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here. He was no stranger to difficult missions, to balancing the weight of command with the lives of his crew. But this mission had been different. This time, they hadn't fought with weapons alone. They had fought with empathy, with understanding, and it had changed them. The intercom crackled, and Ryan's voice broke into his thoughts. "Captain, we're receiving a high-priority transmission from the Galactic Council. They want to debrief us in person." Kaelen nodded, unsurprised. He knew that facing the Council would be inevitable, and he was prepared for whatever response they had. He had no regrets. They had saved worlds, stopped a cosmic threat, and given an ancient entity a second chance. No punishment could take that away from him. "Understood, Ryan. Let's set a course for Council Central," Kaelen replied, a quiet determination settling over him. "Prepare the crew for a formal presentation. We'll show the Council exactly what we accomplished." As the ship made its way to Council Central, the crew gathered to review their mission. They were keenly aware of the Council's influence and the power they held over their future, but Kaelen's confidence reassured them. Whatever awaited them, they would face it together. 2 days later, the Orion's call docked at Council Central, a sprawling, luminous space station where representatives from every galactic species convened. The crew felt the weight of the station's grandeur, its halls filled with dignitaries and officials, each one a symbol of the galaxy's interconnected civilizations. Kaelen, flanked by his senior officers, strode confidently into the council chamber, ready to speak for the ship that had answered the galaxy's call in a way no one else had dared. Inside, the council members sat in a sweeping arc, their gazes fixed on Kaelen and his crew. The Alpharan counselor, who had been their most vocal critic, was present, her expression as stern and inscrutable as ever. Kaelen's heart raced, but he kept his face calm, meeting her gaze without hesitation. The Alpharan counselor spoke first, her tone as cold as Kaelen remembered. "Captain Kaelen Arjun of the Orion's call, you stand before this council after having disobeyed direct orders, taking actions deemed reckless and dangerous by our governing body. Do you deny these actions?" Kaelen took a deep breath, his voice steady. "I do not deny my actions, counselor. I made the decision to engage the pulse because we believed that understanding it was our only chance to stop it, and we were right. By connecting with the pulse, we prevented further destruction, saved lives, and offered it a new path." The counselor's expression didn't soften, but she tilted her head, regarding him with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. "And yet, you put the galaxy at risk in the process. Why should the council endorse a strategy so unpredictable?" Senya stepped forward, her voice clear and impassioned. "Counselors, with all due respect, we saw what the pulse could do firsthand. Traditional methods weren't enough. Any attempt to destroy it would have cost countless lives. By reaching out, we showed the pulse an alternative, and it responded. It chose to stop, to repair the damage it had done. That outcome wouldn't have been possible through force." Murmurs rippled through the chamber as the council members exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from doubt to intrigue. Finally, the Alpharan counselor addressed Kaelen again, her voice softer but still guarded. "Captain Arjun, your mission has set a precedent. The council cannot ignore that your methods, while unconventional, achieved a result none of us anticipated. The question remains, how can we trust that this pulse will not revert to its previous state, that it won't become a threat once more?" Zarak, his voice calm and resonant, spoke up. "Counselors, the pulse is on a journey of self-discovery, of healing. It has remembered fragments of what it once was, and it has chosen a new path. While nothing is certain, I believe it has genuinely changed. It no longer wishes to consume. It seeks purpose beyond survival. We have shown it what that means." The counselor nodded, though her expression remained contemplative. "Your words carry weight, Zarak, but this council must weigh the risks against the benefits. The galaxy relies on caution to maintain stability." Kaelen took a step forward, his voice filled with conviction. "Counselor, we cannot protect the galaxy through caution alone. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to take a leap, to trust that growth is possible, even for something as ancient and dangerous as the pulse. We did what no one else was willing to do, and it worked. We can't fear the unknown forever." A quiet fell over the chamber as his words sank in. Slowly, one by one, the council members nodded, their expressions shifting from doubt to reluctant acceptance. The Alpharan counselor held his gaze, her lips pressed into a thin line, but finally she inclined her head. "Very well, Captain. The Council acknowledges the success of the Orion's call and recognizes your contributions to the galaxy's safety. Your crew will be commended for your courage and ingenuity." A ripple of relief swept through the crew, but Kaelen remained composed, accepting the Council's approval with a nod. They had won, but more importantly, they had changed the Council's perception of what was possible. As they left the Council chamber, Kaelen felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They had defied the Council, changed the course of galactic policy, and saved countless lives. But more than that, they had proven that even the greatest threats could be approached with understanding. Back on board the Orion's call, Kaelen addressed his crew, his voice filled with quiet pride. "You've all done something remarkable. We faced the unknown, challenged conventions, and showed the galaxy that hope is as powerful as any weapon. Our journey isn't over, but this victory belongs to all of us." The crew erupted in applause, each member aware of the part they had played in this historic mission. Kaelen looked out over the faces of those who had stood by him, each one a reminder of the courage and resilience that defined Orion's call. As the ship prepared to set out on its next mission, Kaelen felt a renewed sense of purpose. They would continue exploring, reaching out to the unknown, seeking solutions that bridged understanding with action. The galaxy was vast and unpredictable, but he knew now that they were ready for whatever came next. And as the stars stretched out before them, the crew of the Orion's call knew that their legacy would endure, not just as a ship that had saved the galaxy, but as a force that had chosen empathy over fear and unity over isolation. Their journey would go on, fueled by the knowledge that the galaxy was a place of endless possibility, and that even the darkest forces could hold the potential for light. And in the quiet vastness of space, the Orion's call sailed forward, carrying with it the hope of a future defined not by conflict, but by the courage to connect, to heal, and to understand.